main stage, we're going to have Sam Basu talk about MVVM versus MVU. All right, here's Sam.
All right. Hey, I'm hoping you folks can hear me and you can see me. Can anyone confirm that you can hear me? Check, check. Anyone? Okay. We are live and just making sure everyone can hear me. Yes, no? All right, I'm going to assume that you are. And let me move some screens around so I can see the rest of my setup here. And I'm going to share this other application here. All right. Let's go ahead and hide that. No, not that. Here we go. Gotta start from the beginning. All right, so unless I hear from any of you that you can't hear me or you can't see me, I'm going to assume that you can. So let's roll. So welcome again to MonkeyFest USA. I think it's been a long day. We have all hung out and learned a lot from fellow developers, and all of you in the chat room. I've been watching some of the chat, and you're all passionate developers, and that's great that we have a community, and I'm super proud to have this event. Now, let me see. You are not seeing my updated screen. You're just looking at the PowerPoint deck while I am looking at my slides. So hang on. Let me check. So folks in the back room, can you confirm what you're seeing? Actually, let me just open up just a regular live site and see what you're all seeing, because I think the backstage is lagging a little bit. So give me a second. Let me go access the live event here. Enter that, and if I go to live, no, you are all not seeing my PowerPoint. All right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. You're just not seeing when I go into slide mode. Yeah, you're all seeing the several slides, but when I actually go in slide mode, you're not seeing it. Okay, hang on. So let me share my whole screen. Maybe that'll make things a little better. So hang in there. So we're going to stop this, and we're going to go share the whole screen. Yeah, there you go. And hide that. Go full screen. I think that's where we want to be. Okay. All right. So yeah, folks, welcome back again. Sorry for the technical quick glitch. But yeah, hopefully you can all see me, hear me. So let's talk MVVM and MVU and design patterns. And so I think all throughout the day, we have talked about a lot of like cutting edge tech, right? I think this is the last session. They clearly saved the worst for the last. Let's slow down here a little bit. Let's talk about the things that we care about when we are shipping big applications. Where do design patterns matter, or do you care about them when you even are shipping applications on your own, when you're an indie developer, like myself, like so many of you, if you're doing nights and weekends, do you care about design patterns? So let's start. And I am a streamer, so I do apologize for the green screen. I'm just too lazy to bring it down over the weekends. It stays up pretty much all week. So my name is Sam Basu. I am a developer advocate for Progress Software. Many of you maybe know us for the things we make, Telerik and Candy UI and Fiddler, anything we can do to make .NET and JavaScript developers more productive and reporting and testing, you name it. So I'm a developer advocate. I speak, I write. I'll show you where I live. But that right there is my social handle. So if you need to get hold of me, be it on Twitter or GitHub or anywhere, that's where I'm at. Okay, so let me minimize the backstage window here so I can see you all and I can see your chat in case you have questions far away. So let's begin. So first up, this has been a difficult year, so just a quick acknowledgement. I hope you and yours are staying safe and you're trying to be as productive as we can. Like I said, like I travel a lot. I think many of you do as well. It's been a difficult year, so hopefully we can all get together and, like they say, like this too shall pass. So please take care. Empathy, kindness, that's all we can do this year. But looking forward, we have a lot more things technology-wise that's to be excited about. So I know we are all remote, and maybe some of you are from South America. I am in the northwest part of Pennsylvania in North America. It's Eastern time, getting close to the end of the day here. So I'm so glad that we can all hang out, and hopefully wherever you are, you're happy and you are trying to take all of it in. There's been some great sessions today. So let's talk design patterns, okay? What exactly is a design pattern? Why should you care? So in software engineering, when we see a certain problem come up over and over again, that's when we have to come up with a solution that works for a majority of those cases, like a repeatable solution, right? And that's where design patterns kind of emerge. It's essentially just a set of best practices, a set of fundamental ways of doing things that kind of help us not do the boilerplate stuff over and over again. And within, like, there are some broad design patterns all throughout the history of software engineering, and there are like multiple sub practices within each of them, and we can mix and match. So design patterns are good. But the thing is, like, based on who you talk to, you might find developers who absolutely love design patterns, and then folks who absolutely hate design patterns. And it doesn't need to be this way. I think it's like we all need to be somewhere in the middle. The problem is where design patterns get a bad rap is because, let me switch to chat. I think I'm not looking at all of your chat here. I'm going to go to the staging chat. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so you are all chiming in to say that you can hear me. So that's good. Thank you. Okay, now I can actually see all of your chat. So the problem is we very often are trying to fit a design pattern to every project, and that's just not right, because I mean, I'm a big fan of this trend or this idea that we have called pain-driven development, right? So you should do something if it's helping you kind of alleviate a little bit of your pain. And some of these patterns are exactly meant to do that. They're going to help you get rid of the pain, especially when you have a big project, or even on a small project when you have issues, when you're trying to unit test, or when you're trying to separate out your concerns. That's where these things are helpful. Now, I have been to way too many like hackathons. I'm old, by the way. I've been to a lot of things where like we'll do a all-day hackathon, and it's hard to code a full app in a day, but we all try a little bit, and then we are judged. And people get all hung up on some design patterns that introduce maybe a little bit of complexity, and you don't end up shipping as much because you're too concerned about not having any code in your code behind and just trying to do as clean of an architecture as you can. I'm not quite a purist. I understand where these things fit, and I have used these design patterns for years and years. But again, just being a realist, if you are shipping something by your own, and I mean, .NET in particular has come a long way. So like there are no memory leaks all over the place. You don't have to be too concerned about kind of maybe not using every one of the design patterns. I see people trying to get rid of all their code from code behind, which is something of a good goal. But things like animations or things, I mean, it's okay if you can ship your app, and if it's performant, who cares? The end user doesn't care what design pattern you're using. So this is just my one caveat. So it's, again, the right tools for the right job. Let's make sure we understand what those patterns are, and we're using it in the right project in the right way. So having said that, let's talk about MVVM, which I know most of you, again, just from the chat all through the day, you are all passionate Xamarin and .NET developers, maybe some of you do JavaScript as well. So this is something you know, and this is bread and butter for a lot of us. So I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm going to try to maybe talk through half of this, and I'm going to try to show you some demos. We'll look at some Xamarin stuff. We'll look at some Comet. We'll look at some Blazor, just to kind of see the mix and match of where some of these patterns land, okay? So with MVVM, perhaps you already know this and have used this for years, but for me, this can become over-architected or overkill if we do not understand all of the moving pieces, because the basics are here, but then there are lots of side concepts, right? So the basics are model, view, vModel. The model is primarily your data entities, your POCO objects, your CLR, your DTO objects. It's what's handling your business logic, right? You get it from a database or from the cloud, whatever, and then you package it up that makes sense for your application. The view is the front end. That's what the user sees. That's the UI part of it. And then in the middle is the view model, which is the orchestrator, essentially taking stuff from the model, handing it over to the view, and back out again. So you have view model, which is kind of a view of the model that you perhaps want to present. And you also want to be the one source that controls the UI interactions, because this is where we want that separation in the view. We do not want too much of business logic in the view that makes it untestable. And the view, like a single view, should not know a whole lot about other views, right? And this is where we can have that separation. So we have data binding, we have commands when the user interacts with something on the UI screen, and then you will have the view model go and update the model if need be, and then you have messages and notifications back and forth. So this is the primary MVVM promise, but around it you have lots of concepts. You have dependency injection, you have commanding systems, you have navigation patterns and messaging patterns. So just a lot of things, right? So my 2 cents is use it to a point where you understand and it's helping you, not to a point where you're trying to be too much of a purist. And again, there are frameworks that help you. A lot of it is actually baked into some of the things we do. So again, keep in mind the core goals of MVVM. And this kind of started back in like 2005-06 timeframe, almost with WPF. I remember Microsoft, one of the Microsoft employees came up with a beautiful blog post, and that was the start. And then we all kind of got on it. It's about testability. It's about reusability of your view models and your classes, and just overall sanity in your code base, right? So that's MVVM. Now, like I said, some of the frameworks that we normally use, like in particular xamarin.forms, which I'll talk about, much of this is actually built in. Your DI, your configuration services, your navigation, your messaging, it's all built in. You don't have to go outside of it if you don't feel the need to, right? But again, if you are working perhaps in a bigger team and you have a big code base and maybe you want to bring in a little bit of sanity, you don't want to keep writing that boilerplate code over again. That's where the MVVM frameworks really come in. MVVM Lite, Laurent Pognan, which is a good friend of mine. Prism started back from WPF, and again, good friends, Brian Lagunas, Dan Siegel. They maintain Prism for WPF and now UWP and xamarin.forms and Uno platform. MVVM Cross is also great. So again, these are all competing and all great frameworks. Bring them in when you feel comfortable with the way they're doing things. And again, it's just they're getting rid of some of the boilerplate code that you would have to write. So I'll try to touch upon some of these frameworks and essentially what they do. They offer you some great templates that kind of help you with a good starting point. So what is MVU? This is the maybe if you have just been doing XAML and C#, maybe you have not dealt with a whole bunch of other design patterns that are mostly popular, like especially the web community. They use a lot of MVC, which is Model View Controller or Model View Presentation, right? So these are patterns that are a little more simpler in their mindset as to how things work. So the model in MVU is essentially the model like we are used to treating it, but with a twist. It's not just about data. It's essentially the state of the application. And you hear this all over the place with React, things like React, a little bit in Angular as well. Blazor, if you're doing .NET, uses MVU all over the place. So the model is essentially keeping a state of your application as to what the UI is showing and what the objects are behind the scenes that you're binding to, right? So the view is essentially just rendering whatever the model asks it to render. And then if something the user does or something that your app, some other part of your app is doing things, you need an update. And that update happens back on the model. There's no view model. There's no middleman here, with the intention that it's kind of like an immutable thing. Right, so you can choose to persist state, and there are lots of frameworks that will help you persist state if you need to, or if you are okay with the state being updated as you go, that's fine too. Kind of goes back to, we're actually seeing some of these things in like C#9. If you are paying attention do things like records. It's the same idea. It's value versus reference type, and what is immutable, what should be, or how should we update the state as we go along. So again, fresh concept. If you are doing a lot of MVVM, it's just a different way of thinking, and it is unidirectional data binding, but in essence, yeah, Brandon Minnick, our good friend, immutability is nice. Immutability is nice, yeah. If you know how to use it. So yes, great concepts. So I'm going to stop here with MVVM and MVU because, again, you're all here to hear about that, but I do want to spend a few minutes talking about where can I use this, right? It's great to hear these design patterns and know that what they do, but we would like to see some examples, right? So what can I do with MVVM today, and what can I do with MVU today, and where can I apply these? So let's take a look at the different app platforms and where they are headed and where these design patterns can actually fit, okay? So you may have seen some of these slides from Microsoft. .NET Conf happened like 2 weeks back, and this is an awesome time to be a .NET developer. Pretty much all of the Microsoft-ish tech that we're going to talk about, it all runs on .NET today. So .NET 5 is here. It's a big reunification effort, runs everywhere, modern tooling, and you can see the work that's been put in behind the scenes to give you that unified runtime, the BCL, the Mono, and the .NET Core combined runtimes, so your apps can run faster using some of the latest and greatest things underneath it. So .NET 5 is here, very exciting. .NET 6 is scheduled. Again, a lot of you, I was looking at David talk about MAUI. Many of you may be waiting for an LTS version of .NET, which is .NET 6, and a lot of good things happening in 2021. But this, I mean, let's celebrate .NET 5. This was a big effort, and it eases a lot of pain. So I want to start with 3 different things. So desktop, web, and mobile. Let's talk about where these frameworks are and where we can apply design patterns. So quick look at desktop, just a quick rundown of the most common things. WinForms, WPF, UWP, WinUI, as you all know. These are primarily the things we use to reach .NET or Microsoft Windows desktops, right? And again, all of them are great. WinForms kind of is doing that whole model of drag and drop and code behind, but everything else is pretty much XAML and C# ecosystem, right? I have this slide for like WPF and WinForms. It really hurts me when people say like, oh, it's a desktop app, it's a legacy application. No, it's running your business, so it is very real. And modern WPF, modern WinForms runs on .NET 5, the latest .NET framework. So if you're happy with .NET framework, keep running your apps there. But if you want to make use of the latest APIs or have the side-by-side installs, the single file installs, you want deployments with click once, all of it is done and doable with modern WPF. And again, that's XAML and C# that we're talking about. UWP, this is Universal Windows Platform, and I get this question a lot. Is UWP dying? And no, it's not dying, because whatever we are doing with WinUI, which is, you may have heard of this a couple of times already today, it's the end-to-end UI stack for modern Windows, and it's sitting right on top of UWP, right? So Win32 and WinUI essentially sits on top of Win32 and UWP. So this perhaps is the most modern way of building Windows applications, but again, WPF and other technologies are fine too. So again, all of this is XAML and C#, and all of this will do MVVM, which is what we are used to for years and years now. Let's talk about mobile real quick. This is my kind of 1-minute spiel on all things mobile, because there are a lot of ways in which you can reach mobile form factors. It doesn't always need to be an app. Maybe the web is fine for you. So I'm sure I'm missing a few things, but these are some of the broadest things I see. Mobile web, you can make a really nice website that is mobile friendly, things are touch friendly, lots and lots of frameworks to help you out. All of the Sprout frameworks, Twitter Bootstrap, KinderUI, lots of help. You can absolutely do native, but it's expensive, as we all know. 3 different code bases towards maintaining the same app. That's hard. Hybrid, I think, like, if you can use the same web technologies to build a native app today, why would you build a hybrid app? But again, for simple line of business apps, it is still a legit solution. So I think Apache Cordova maybe is falling a little behind. But again, if you still have apps, you can keep on maintaining them. It's just not as performant as a real native app. And in the last few years, we have seen a lot of JavaScript native using things like React Native or NativeScript. These are pretty much exactly what xamarin.forms does. xamarin.forms takes your C# and XAML, turns it over into native UI and native code. That's exactly what the JavaScript folks do. They turn JavaScript or TypeScript and other code or markup into native binaries for each platform. So talking about design patterns, the web stuff uses a lot of MVP and a lot of MVU already. So when we talk about Flutter, when we talk about React Native, those folks are already using a lot of MVU. And we .NET developers, and I come from a long .NET background, I do just a little bit of JavaScript to be dangerous. So this may be a new concept to us, but this is well tested and tried for years and years now. And obviously the cross-compile story, we have Xamarin, we have Uno Platform. Flutter, in a way, it's not quite native, but the dev loop is so quick and you don't care. It's very performant. So again, just a broad way of building mobile apps today. Let's talk about Xamarin, because I think that's where most of you are. That's where I am at. Xamarin is easy. Xamarin makes it super easy for .NET developers to take your apps to other platforms, as we know, truly native cross-platform apps. Just a quick glimpse of where we started and where we are. This is what was like 6-7 years back. This was Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, which is where we started. We first started writing shared C# logic, and we built the heads separately. You can still do that, and this is the part that is trying to be part of .NET as a whole. So this will be .NET iOS and .NET Android. So again, a lot more confidence as you move forward. And again, I'm a big fan of xamarin.forms because as a .NET developer, I don't want to learn every bit of iOS or Android. I want to write some shared UI layer, and that's where the XAML fits. Brandon Minnick is in the chat room. He'll tell you that you can define all of the abstracted UI in C#. And that's kind of where I think xamarin.forms started, and we kind of forget that. We always do XAML in C#, at least most of us, and MVVM fits very nicely. But you don't have to. You can define the whole visual tree in C# and be good with it. Keep in mind, like the purple and the green, the blue, they don't entirely go away, because you need that sometimes, that native knowledge, so you can jump into native land and render some native UI as and when you need to. So as you all know, xamarin.forms, starting with 2016, when things became open source, part of Microsoft, a lot of things have evolved, and we have to love the community, the pull requests, and such smart individuals who come in and help. So I love the renderers for xamarin.forms for macOS and for JDK Linux, for Tizen, and for WebAssembly as well. These are amazing because it lets your code go to so many places. David was talking about Catalyst, which I'll talk about as well. So we have a very excuse me, we have a very real way of reaching the Mac desktop in a couple of different ways. So that's all great news. Okay, let's talk about MAUI real quick. And I might take a stance trying to answer this, because a lot of folks were wondering what exactly happened to .NET Conf. Why was there not more MAUI? Because, again, I don't work for Microsoft, so my 2 cents, it's not ready because we are all working towards it. And it's a lot of work behind the scenes, as you all know. Getting all those renderers to be universal, to make them handlers, to separate that out from the core platforms, and making them available to things like Comet or Blazor. So this is absolutely happening. It's just going to be a slow climb all the way until like November 2021. So yeah, this is great. It opens up to a lot of the comfort things for developers, like the single project apps, being able to comfortably hit macOS and Windows, perhaps through WinUI, and then iOS, Android is our bread and butter. So all good things happening with .NET MAUI. This is Catalyst. It was called like Marzipan earlier this year. You see macOS Big Sur, and this is running iOS apps in the Mac desktop, because Apple has a similar problem to a lot of other things where I lost my other screen, but it's now back. So it's a lot of people want to write for iOS App Store, so not a lot for the Mac desktop. So this is bringing iOS apps to run on the Mac desktop. So this is great. And all of those iOS apps can be written in xamarin.forms, and you can do MVVM. Dual screen devices are here. You saw the first one. There's going to be more. And it just introduces new UX paradigms. So you can do different things with the additional real estate that you have. And again, all of these can be written in MVU or MVVM patterns based on if you're doing C# XAML or other things. So again, a lot of things happening. Uno Platform is great. This is if you really did not want to write the xamarin.forms XAML for reaching iOS or Android, this is using UWP XAML, the classic Windows XAML. They are running on Mono and Xamarin, and they will stretch your code into iOS or Android. Many might say their WebAssembly implementation is really, really good up until this point. So again, this is MVVM, this is C# and XAML. So what's not to like? And if you're old like me, I did Silverlight for like 2 years, and the dev experience was so good. And part of it was the design pattern, part of it was the tools that were so rich. So again, Silverlight is ending live support in October of next year. You have lots of ways to migrate those apps out, perhaps to WPF, perhaps to xamarin.forms, or perhaps to the web using Blazor. So again, all of them take design patterns. And speaking of Blazor, this is not quite like for mobile devs, but I mean, it has a big play. So if you are watching the ASP.NET space, Blazor is amazing because it lets you write C# for your front and back as well. You don't have to. Blazor can absolutely run in a server-side model, which is where it started off, using a SignalR bridge in real time to update the DOM as you go by, but it needs a dedicated connection between the client and the server at all times. But starting this May, you have Blazor running client-side fully using WebAssembly, and that's a great solution. You're shipping .NET DLLs that work natively in the browser, great performance. So that's all for the web. But what that means for, I mean, Blazor has implications for mobile and desktop as well, right? So you can absolutely do an Electron shell with Blazor, which is kind of heavy-handed. You don't need Node.js. So they're looking at, like in WinUI 3, they're looking at things like WebView 2 and kind of a lighter web shell, so your Blazor applications can run inside desktop within that shell. You can absolutely build PWAs with Blazor. And you can obviously do xamarin.forms, which is the Blazor mobile bindings. And again, these are MVU patterns that you're talking about. So I'm just trying to give you a feel of all the different places in which you can do MVVM and MVU. Okay, before I go into demos, just a quick shout out. Maybe you know us as the things we make, for the things we make. That's Telerik for all things .NET, UI for Xamarin, UI for WPF, WinForms. That's kind of what we do. If you're doing JavaScript, then obviously we have Kendo UI for all things. I mean, bring your framework with Angular, Vue, or React. If you want UI, we got you covered, and we work very closely with Google, with Microsoft to make sure developers have the right tools. Okay, so I spoke quite a bit, right? We started with just the definitions of what is MVVM, what does it do, what is MVU, what does that do, where are the differences, but it's a very theoretical level, right? So let's go into code. And the only reason I took that like 10-minute detour away from the design patterns was to kind of just show you the breadth of all the things you can do. So talk about web, talk about desktop, talk about mobile. You can do design patterns almost everywhere, right? And it's your choice what fits for your app, and it's your choice as to what comfort level you have. Pick the right tools for the job, essentially, right? That's all we are saying. So let's jump out and see where we are at. All right, so since I shared the screen, you should still see my desktop, so that's good. Chat room, you're quiet. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here. I'm here to answer anything, or I'll try to answer. Okay, where should we start? Let's start with xamarin.forms, okay? And let's slowly dig into the other things. Let me start with the generic project, and then I'll show you what it might do. So let me pull up another window here and show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start with an example that's a real-world app that's actually in the stores. Whether you have an iOS or an Android or UWP device, you can play around with it. I'm not trying to sell you on any of your UI. It just happens to be using some of the Telerik UI. So I'm going to show you where the code is. So if you head out to Telerik, and if you head out to mobile components and the UI for Xamarin, we have a big suite. This is the trial that I'm showing you. Again, you don't have to install anything. You can just play with all of our UI on your phone. But we give you the source code. It's also on GitHub. So it's a full real-world application that is fully baked in with an MVVM design pattern. And just to kind of show you, like, this is what xamarin.forms does out of the box. You don't need a framework to essentially to get done. As long as your design is clean, you can absolutely do MVVM. So here's the code base. Let me minimize things here. Let me see if I can zoom and if it catches up. Looks like you do, or maybe not. Hang on, I zoomed out too much. Yeah, folks, let me know if you see the zoom, because that way I can just make the text a little bigger. Okay, so here's a quick little project here. It's not quite little because it actually has all of our UI, but let me show you something. Let me run this thing and show you the structure and the architecture and where a design pattern might fit. So I'm on a Mac, so Visual Studio knows that there is Xcode right there. I don't have to go to a network. It's just nice being on a Mac. But again, you can do this on Windows just as fine. Visual Studio will do the handshake, find the Mac for you on the network or in the cloud. So it's a good place to be. So here's the app, which again, you can just, yep, Zoom works. Thank you, Brandon. This is the app that you can, again, just do a search and you can see all of this. So we actually give you the code in the app itself so you can see how we are doing things. So this is a full-featured app, right? Really, really heavy with all of our UI, everything that you can think of. It's right there. I wanted to just show you a couple of quick examples here. So this is our kind of a featured controls list, and you can dive into any of the UI. For example, this one's a combo box. So if I dive in here, just to kind of show you the code. So this is just a combo box that you expect. So let's say we know Xamarin. We are looking for jobs, full-time jobs, and posted anytime. And then I hit define jobs. This little notification thing comes up, right? So again, just a quick, simple example of how this is. And I'm going to show you the code as to how that works. Now, if you look at this featured controls list, this is like a long, like a slide view, like a wizard thing that holds a collection of things, right? So if we have to look at this app here, there's nothing iOS specific. There's nothing Android specific. I'm not a big Android fan, so I almost always run my simulators on iOS. So if I look at just the code here, let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay, dependencies. Nothing going on here. You only have xamarin.forms, Microsoft, Newtonsoft, and the Telerik UI, which is all DLLs here. So just with that, I mean, I'm just trying to show you there are no MVVM frameworks. If you look at just some simple XAML markup here, this is the one drop-down that I showed you. I picked this one out because it's just simple. So this one here is a combo box, and it's bound to this collection called skills, which is obviously an observable collection, and that's how you get the Xamarin Blazor. What exactly do you know? And that's it, right? So it's a two-way data binding, and if you look at the code behind, it's nothing, right? It's just initialized component, right? And this is what an ideal MVVM project should look like. You should not have anything in the code behind. But I will say this, you don't need to shoot for this, okay? If you have animations, if you have behaviors, like some of those things are fine, really. I see people spend way too much time trying to clean everything out so that they have nothing in the views. And that, again, is the ideal goal, but don't sweat it. It's fine if you have a little bit, as long as your event handlers are not in the view, because that kind of gets in the way of testing. And also, like from view 1, if you are going to view 2 by naming view 2, that's not good, because then you cannot test. And your one view knows way too much about the other view and the parameters that you pass around. So that's where navigation comes in. That's where your messaging systems come in. So if I look at the corresponding view model here, this is just a sample app. So this is just a skills observable collection that we are building. These are the skills, and we are just binding that to the combo box. And it already shows you things like iCommand, which is, again, just an interface that we always use. Perhaps you have effects, perhaps you have behaviors. Those are all in the code base, just to have you take a look at a full-featured app that's in the app stores that's not using an MVVM framework, because all of it comes built in with xamarin.forms. And when you click on that, find me a job, essentially, it's looking at this job button command executed. If you have not seen the notification, it just shows you that. So just to kind of show you real quick. And if I start from the very first page where I showed you like the list of all the different UI controls that I have, this is essentially what it is, just the featured controls. Now take a look at this. This is just a slide view here. The item source is binding to this collection called featured, and then it has an item template, so it knows exactly how to show that list of items. And all of that, again, in the code behind, there is just not much. I mean, we have some things that are on disappearing or on appearing, just some things about the view itself that only that view needs to care about, but everything else is in the code behind, right? So in here, this is our featured collection. It's just a collection of controls that you bind to. And then when you navigate, this is using a navigation service. I'm going to try to find it here somewhere here. So open control. So we're going to say navigation service, hey, this is the control that you clicked on by the name of the control. Now let's hand you over. If we have to carry any parameters, we will. but let's hand you over to the other kind of listener that the navigation service knows that's been registered, right? So I'm trying to give you a quick example of something that is fully MVVM, because you can create those folders and that structure and the architecture yourself without using a framework. It's built in. David Robles is saying, I think animations fit better. Yes, not in the view model. It's kind of part of their RSRP. Yes, agreed. Okay, so this was kind of 101, right? Let's go into the other things here. Let's see. Let's look at Prism. And our good friend Dan Siegel and Brian Lagunas might be happy that I'm doing this. But essentially, all of the MVVM frameworks, they come with their own templates, and it's nice. And they're all like extensions, so you get like file new project. So in here, this is using a Prism extension. That's a template pack. So when you start this up, when you do file new project, essentially it's still xamarin.forms, but it changes the structure, the container of your application, so it can give you some of those boilerplate things out of the box, right? So this one here is not a xamarin.forms or application. This is a Prism application, right? So you get your app resources, anything else you want. In your app xaml.cs, which is where your app just kind of starts out, you're going to see that there is a little bit of kind of method to the madness. The navigation service is saying, hey, this is my first page. So it's not just like main page, here's view number 1. Yeah, they're clearly registering things. And then this is the iContainer registry. Excuse me. So all of the pages of your app or things that you want to refer by name, they need to be registered here. So the navigation service, the container, knows exactly how you're navigating back and forth. They have a view model base, which kind of inherits from these things like bindable base, navigation aware. So it just has that awareness of exactly what a navigation service should be. And then you have methods to override, like on navigated from, to, and destroy. So navigation service is nicely built in. Messaging is built in. App delegate, this one essentially just does the xamarin.forms in it and just starts up your application. If I look at main page here, this is kind of the page 1, and then I'm going to show you like page 2, just to kind of show you where things are a little different if you use like straight up even handlers in xamarin.forms as compared to Prism. And I know like the xamarin.forms community, we have debated this for years. Like, should there be a little more navigation and structure to the way xamarin.forms starts out as, if you're just getting the tools and if you do file new project? And I agree with the reality that most developers, maybe perhaps you would not start this way, okay? If you're fine writing even handlers, and that's where you start. And then as you have pain, that's when you refactor out your code. So this one here is using a content page, but then this one's just a label. The button here is using a command, navigate command, and it has a text. If I look at the view model here, this one is setting the title of the page to main page, and it has a delegate command that's invoking this navigate function. Now, keep in mind, this is a view model, so the view, again, does not know exactly where I'm going. So we are sending a couple of parameters here. We are sending a message parameter with the title or with the name of secondary page, and we are just navigating to this other page. And when we go to the other page, we can read the parameters that came from page 1, and we can look at the message parameter. And if I look at the XAML here, I'm literally setting the title of the second page to the title property, which is what we set from the message parameter that came in. So if I run this, this is like super simple, oversimplified example, but just to kind of prove the point, like where it's different. It's doing those things for you. So this is main page, right? That's the title. And I have welcome to xamarin.forms, and I can do navigate. I'm on page 2. I didn't have to do navigation. This is still like first in, last out navigation stack, so I can go back. But this secondary page, this title essentially came from the first page, because the view model told us like that should be the title, right? So this is the other one, and I can go back, right? So navigation, messaging, and again, within MVVM, you can do lots of like different like sub practices or sub patterns. Like there is an iRepository pattern, there's a factory pattern, there's a navigation factory pattern or navigation service pattern, lots of different things. So you go as much as you want, right? Nothing is holding your hands to say, do this exactly. All right, let me show you one more thing here before I go to MVU. So close that. It would not be fair if I just showed you Prism, because there are other things that do MVVM really well. So this is MVVM Cross. And again, same idea here. They do some of the boilerplate code. You're going to see IOC. So dependency injection is a type of IOC. You're inverting the control from the views and letting the view model drive the whole thing. So this one here starts out as an MVVM cross app. And again, the same thing, registering things with the navigation service. And again, this is using their template. So app XAML doesn't have anything. It's just an MVX forms application. This is my first view model. You will see that this one here initiates the navigation service, passes it in if you need to. You got a couple of properties here. This is a nickname, and then it just says hello world or hello whatever is your nickname. And then it has a command that shows you the other page, kind of similar to the Prism thing that I showed you. This one here is just a XAML layout. It's just a label entry, and keep in mind the label here is bound to that hello property, which is nice. And then I think, yeah, there's nothing in the code behind, obviously. So if I go ahead and run this now, this is again just the basics of it. So take a look at Prism, take a look at MVVM Cross, and see what works for you. What do they give you out of the box? So if I go MonkeyFest, obviously it is bound to that the hello property, and it knows how to update. If I go to the about view, that is navigation that's built in. When I come back, it retains the state of where it is, because we never really killed off. We didn't destroy the first page entirely. It's still sitting in memory, right? So again, what I'm trying to tell you is, I showed you 3 examples. One is pure xamarin.forms, MVVM built in. You don't have to do much if you structure your app right. And then if you feel like bringing those MVVM frameworks, that's going to help you out, okay? All right. Demos. I can show you demos all day. This is what I do, as do all of you. So let's see, what else can we look at? Let's look at, let's look at Blazor, right? What can I show you? Let's do Blazor Mobile here. So what I'm trying to show you is this little API here that I love hitting. It's called JSON placeholder. If you just wanted to try out some APIs for some sample apps, this is great. And again, this is not the only one. But they give you these resources like posts and comments, and then when you click on it, it's just a full CRUD. And essentially, this one gives you Latin, which is fun to kind of play around with. So let's do this from Blazor. So if I look at this project here, now keep in mind, Blazor mobile bindings is nothing about WebAssembly. This is purely a native app that is sitting right on top of xamarin.forms. You can do hybrid apps, but again, I'm not the biggest fan of hybrid apps. If you can do native, why not? So that's what Blazor Mobile brings to the table. And this is like .NET Conf. Elon had a session, and this is great because this is kind of a precursor of taking Blazor, which is the component model, the Razor component model, kind of similar to maybe React, and stretching it to mobile, stretching it to desktop. And this is kind of that simplified MVU way of thinking about it. If you look at the things here, where's my zoom? Yep, my zoom is not working anymore. Okay, there we go. Well, too much. This one is still using xamarin.forms, and it's using mobile Blazor bindings. But as we will see, you don't always have to use xamarin.forms. Okay, come back. Maybe the zoom is not quite working for me. I'll stay away from it. Okay, so in this one here, I got some import statements in my imports Razor. App.cs. Now this is different, right? If you have done xamarin.forms, like you still have the on, start, sleep, and resume, but this code is different from how a xamarin.forms application starts up, because this is very much the ASP.NET model. This right here is DI. This right here is you adding components one at a time, sort of like a registry, and telling your app, like, these are the things I need, and this is how you can navigate. So if you have like other middleware services, this is where you get to plug them in. So this one here is Hello Razor. It's the Razor view, okay? And what I'm trying to do is go to that API, bring back a list of these things. And actually, let me go ahead and run this so you have a context of what I'm talking about. So come on, iPhone 11, and it should be Hello World, because like for most mobile apps, it's just a list of things, right? So that's my list of 100 comments in Latin, right? That's all that this app does. So how am I doing this? First up, I have a couple of things here. I have kind of a Poco object that represents what the object is coming back down from the cloud. And then I have a post manager, which is essentially news up HTTP client. This is exactly where we are using async and await, going off to the cloud to make a request at that RESTful endpoint. and then we are saying, get me that list, which is in JSON. And you don't have to do this. I'm kind of old school. I like my Newtonsoft, but use the JSON serializer in .NET and .NET 5, which is actually quite a bit faster. Probably not quite feature parity yet, but again, it's getting there. So I'm deserializing those things back into a collection, an observable collection of my posts. And in my Hello World Razor, this is my Razor view. Way too many times in Blazor, you're going to see markup here, which this one looks like XAML, but it's actually not XAML. This is essentially a Blazor markup. But you see @code and code right there underneath, which makes me kind of a little squeamish because I'm old. I've done web forms and I've done like classic ASP back in the days. That leads to like spaghetti code. So you can actually break this out. You don't have to do this. If I do a razor.cs file and make that a partial class, then you can move all of your code behind, quote unquote, code behind into that separate file. So this one is fetching that data, getting that posts, and then we're going to bind it to that list view. Actually, this one actually does not have a list view, which is what I want to show you. So this is my post list.razor. Okay, this is a single component. Like think about how we do things in XAML. We will write up a long list view, and within that list view, we're going to have item templates that control the repeatability aspect. So within a list view, we have 100 times repetition of the same item template as we are binding to data. This is kind of a flip way of thinking about it, where every one of those 100 things is a component. So this is repeating it 100 components to give you that view of a list view. So this is a component which essentially just is one label that's bound to the title property. And this one's the code. It's looking at the parameter that comes in. And this is my one Blazor component. And then in my Hello World Razor, I'm looping through that collection that I got. And for every component, I'm just going to pass in the individual post that I got. And we're going to strip out the title and just show that, right? So this is MVU in a way. And then this is in Blazor. So if you're doing Blazor for web or desktop or mobile, keep in mind, like this is the pattern that you are kind of doing. It's a simplified way of keeping track of your stack or your state, and then how that updates over life. Okay, let's switch gears. Okay, let's talk a little bit about MVU. And let me show you where I would start if I were to look into this. Let's just say I have never done MVU, which again, I actually have not done a bunch of MVU. So I start almost always with this. So back in May, when we had Build come out, Scott Hunter and those Microsoft folks wrote up this post here. And David and Maddie and Brandon and everybody was on kind of talking through what it is. And right in here, they talked about where we are opening up the funnel to give you that flexibility as a developer. You don't have to do MVVM and C# and XAML, which again will be very welcome in MAUI. I think David Ortner had spent the last like 6 months trying to convince everybody that XAML and C# is good to go. You don't have to do anything; it will be fine in MAUI. But we want to open it up to MVU. We want to open it up to Blazor. So right in here, there's a link to this blog post here. This is by a gentleman named Thomas Band, which I found this article to be an amazing article to understand what exactly MVU is. Now, this again, keep in mind, like any design pattern, this is open to interpretation, right? So he is kind of diving into the crux of what MVU is. You need to have a program, which is essentially your place where execution starts. You need to have an init method, which is the starting point, and then you need to have a model. Now, a model, unlike MVVM, this is kind of the state of the application as it's running. And you have obviously commanding to update things in the UI. And then the message and then the update function is the most important thing, because that's what drives any updates from the view back out into the model. So we can, now keep in mind, immutability means you cannot change the state, but you can update properties on it if you need to be. Right, and then you talk about the view. So this is this kind of comes from the Elm architecture, Elm programming model. And take a look at this if you want to kind of understand MVU. He has got a long, well written up sample of doing like a counter example. And this is great. But again, he also pointed out that what we are doing with MVU in .NET MAUI may not be like a truly purist MVU, and that's fine as long as it makes developers productive. So take a look at this repo here, which I'm sure many of you have already looked at. This is James Clancy and the engineering team. This is the playground right now until this is all baked in and brought over to .NET MAUI. This is Comet. This is where we get to play with MVU style and doing things within xamarin.forms, where we are not using xamarin.forms as a NuGet package. We are using the new handlers. All right, so let's take a look at this. And if I can bring up maybe, and you don't have to do this in Visual Studio, by the way, you can do this in VS Code as well. So it supports, I think, MS Build and .NET builds as well. So this is, if I go ahead and quickly run this, we'll give it a second. I got 13, 12 minutes left, which should be good. Okay, so I can click through. You can understand it's just a counter, right? Essentially, what's happening here is this is the update body, right? So it kind of reads a little differently when you try reading through it. So this is my state, right? This is the state of the things that I care about. In this case, it's just a counter, right? And this view is a comment view. And again, if you look at the dependencies, I'm not going to try to zoom again. This one does not actually have xamarin.forms. This one is just using Xamarin Essentials for you to get to the APIs, but then it's just all comment. And it has like a hot reload kind of built in nicely. So when you look at this code, you can kind of argue that this is a little verbose, and maybe it is if you're just not used to this way of writing it. But I'll tell you again, the React Native, the Flutter folks are very used to doing this. Maybe for those of us who are old and we are kind of too stuck in our XAML ways, this maybe is a different way of thinking about it. So we have to open our mind. But this is beautiful once you get the hang of it. In fact, James has a YouTube video where he builds up like a whole credit card screen purely in C#, and it's beautiful. And I know like Brandon and other folks will swear by defining the UI in C# because you get fantastic IntelliSense. What's not to like about that? And all of your properties are right there. So this one here is just your text and your button property. But this method here, this view body, this whole thing essentially is your update loop, right? Now, you might ask, is this getting called every time an update happens? And the answer is yes, but they're careful about this. They're not rendering the whole thing every time. Like the whole page, we don't need to render that. We can diff, and we can only figure out the things that have changed, which is exactly essentially the same thing that the Xamarin team had to do for xamarin.forms hot reload. So if you remember, like hot reload was great. We could write some XAML, save the file, and it shows up on your simulator, shows up on your devices. Except last year when it was done, I think it was done in a way that was not in line with the way like UWP does it or like WPF would do it. So I think the teams are just collaborating more. I think they did a whole refresh of how hot reload works. And I think, let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, actually, even though this is not a xamarin.forms, but you can see like it has this thing where you can only do it's still in preview, but you can only do changes only. So you don't have to render the whole visual tree over and over again. That's just too expensive. You can just diff and realize only what's changed. So this is the MVU, just the update loop is built in the same exact method in which you're defining the visual tree, right? And if I can show you maybe just a slightly different version of this, and let me pull up this project here. So this one's again the same exact thing. I'm just defining a little more involved of a view just to kind of show you. So I have some states here. Envision this to be like a login screen that you're trying to get into. So I have a name, I have a password, and I have a security value. Now it has things like it has some UI constructs, so you can play around and you can define your visual tree. VStack is it's a vertical stack, just kind of like where we do stack layout and orientation is vertical. Same idea. You're just going to layer things vertically. When you do HStack, that's the horizontal stack, so you're layering things horizontally. There is also a Z-stack, which is essentially layering, which takes a little bit of kind of experience to get used to exactly how the layering and how you're stacking things, so positioning is important. But again, it's got the flexibility, and it's got most of the xamarin.forms elements that you can think of. They are using the new handlers, and then this is like nonstop work from the team. This is the playground. So let me go ahead and run this just to kind of show you a glimpse of this. So we'll give it a second. Same idea, but this one is kind of a fake login screen here, right? So I can go in here and I should probably make them like a watermark thing. And let's say My password is 123, and this is where, so I have this property, right, security value, see that? And then this line of code somewhere is, that's a button, oh, this line of code, you see that slider? So that slider essentially gives you that value. Let me go out here. So this, it's got a value binding to the security value property, and then it's got from 0 to 100 and do it by like one fraction. So here, when I move this braveness indicator, you see that thing. This label is also tied to that security value, right? So this kind of updates as I move around. And when I hit login, essentially, this is a delegate. I mean, you can separate this out as a function, but what I'm essentially doing is I'm just clearing things out, and I'm setting that security value back to 0, right? So when I do that, just going to give you an example, when I hit that login button, the name and the password, I mean, you hopefully have the user signed in and you are ready to take them on to the next page. Then you can clear out whatever you need. And when I reset that value, this slider goes back because everything is data bound. So this is one-way data binding in a way, but think about the loop. Essentially, it's doing the same thing that we would normally do with two-way data binding in MVVM. It's just a fresh way of thinking about it. And the whole thing, like I said, this whole update, this whole body method is the update function, is the update loop. All right, so let's say I've got like 5 more minutes left. What else can I show you? Or I can stop and I can try answering any questions. Let's see. Yeah, let me show you maybe one more thing here. That's kind of fun. Just to kind of show you with back to Blazor mobile bindings. So if you have a custom control today with xamarin.forms, maybe you do MVVM within that control, and that's fine. But you can wrap it up and you can expose it out to Blazor. So this is exactly what I'm doing here. So this is a Blazor mobile bindings project. What I'm bringing in here is a little bit of Telerik controls here, somewhere if I can find it. So this one here is the rad input. It's just a stepper control. So I bring in a Telerik namespace here. So this guy is actually a native iOS and Android UI control, right? And then we have a wrapper over it, which is for xamarin.forms. And that's pure XAML and C#, but we don't have to keep forcing your users. Like envision any other custom control that you might have. You don't have to force your developers to keep doing XAML and C#. It's fairly easy to expose that out as Blazor. So this one here is using a static. It needs a registry handler. I can actually show you in case they have not changed it. Let me see if I do a Blazor mobile bindings, this one here. And if I go into advanced, maybe make it bigger. And if I look into custom components, now take a look at, let me see, what are the user interface component reference. So take a look at this. This is probably like 24 or so controls that are pure xamarin.forms controls that are already available for you to use in Blazor. And then if you wanted to wrap your custom components, they have a wonderful example here, the pancake view, which James Montebango loves to talk about. This is actually a great little piece of UI, but that is a xamarin.forms control now available for you to use in Blazor. So if I go back here, so essentially I'm registering that, and essentially what I have to do is expose that one property or any properties that you have for your xamarin.forms control, and any event handlers need to be exposed out to Blazor. So in my other file here, rad input handler, so essentially we are exposing the step property and we are setting it to whatever the value that comes in when it's exposed out to Blazor. So in my hello world razor, I can just do rad calendar is just another calendar control. And then rad input, this step property, this is the @stepper. So this is like code behind in Blazor. The stepper is 20, right? So if I go ahead and run this, sorry if I'm speaking too quickly for some of you, I will slow down and try to maybe answer some questions or have more of a discussion with you folks. I'm excited. I'm excited about all of this. I want to show things off because it's fun. And again, with design patterns, I worked in, we don't want an iPod Touch 7th generation. No, hang on. I need to change that up to iPhone Pro. That's why I was like, why is it not coming up in my iPhone? Okay, so I have worked in like enormous code bases, which are completely MVVM from scratch, and I have shipped apps where it's just me. So again, the reality is somewhere in between, right? So why is it not running? It's the last thing I want to show you, I promise. It's building. Building. Okay, so trial mode. So that, go away. Okay, see that is the calendar. That's coming from this. Again, it's not XAML. This is the Razor component model, and this is MVU. So right here, we are setting the step property of that input control, the up and down. So when I hit plus, it goes up by 20, because that's where the step is. So we are sending in that parameter down, and it's being tied to a property on that xamarin.forms control, and then it turns around and renders a native iOS control or a native Android control. So again, if you have custom controls, you can expose them out to Blazor fairly easily. Okay, oh God, I'm 3 minutes out. I have to stop, and I don't think I have anything else. So let me bring this up one more time. So every experienced developer will tell you that let's not get too hung up on design patterns, right? They are there to help you, not to make your life more difficult, right? So use the right tools for the right job. As you see your code base growing, as you see more people in your team, and you are starting to hit the boundaries where things are not testable, that's when the design patterns really help. And again, some of the MVVM is a design pattern. It's got nothing to do with any particular framework. xamarin.forms implements some of those things, and it's baked in. So that's your great starting point, and then you can bring in those frameworks to give you more of that comfort and not have to write the boilerplate code. So again, pick what is right. I keep saying that we have a lot of ammunition. Again, this is a Microsoft slide. The world runs some software. We can make a difference. So let's go ahead and make a difference and make amazing apps. The user, again, doesn't care. It's all about us and our sanity of our code base that matters, and that's where design patterns can help. So let me see, chat room. Good friend Andreas is saying, what kind of sorcery is this? Which part was sorcery? Or maybe the whole thing? I don't know. Not quite sure what you're asking. There's no sorcery. It's all magic. No, it's all science. Okay, Samir Mansour was asking, curious, do you guys have any plans to support picture-in-picture for video players? Oh, when you say you guys, I'm guessing you mean us as Telerik. If so, that's a great point. That's a great feedback to take in mind. We do have a site called feedback.telerik.com. If you don't mind, Samir, just go ahead and write that up, or just like give us that feedback, and then we get to vote things up and down. The PMs and the engineers, the team leads, they look through that every single release, every single sprint. So yeah, absolutely. If enough of you vote it up, we'll go make it happen. Yeah, Tony Henrik, thank you for your kind words. Again, like I said, you all are here. You all are amazing. This is an amazing community. I'm so glad every time Xamarin developers get together. We are so passionate, and we move the needle forward together as a community. It's not just Microsoft. It's all of our tooling. It's all of our framework and the design patterns that the community steps up to maintain. All the renderers, everything is all combined to make developers more productive. So let's keep chatting. That's me again on social media. So. Yeah, I'm here anytime you need. Oh, that's the website. Yes, Samir, thank you, and yeah, thank you, big time. Thank you to all of the organizers and all of the folks at MonkeyFest who I know are working tirelessly all throughout the day. Remote conferences are great because it brings people from all over, but it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. Yep, I just cannot agree more. Xamarin community is awesome. So. Thank you all. Thank you for hosting us. Yeah. So, all right, backstage folks, feel free to take me out or bring Claudio back on if you want. And thank you all. I appreciate you.